Hello, and welcome to the MMA Mic Drop Podcast. My name is Jade Bunky. In this episode, I'm going to provide picks and predictions for every single fight that's about to go down at UFC 304. And this fight card is absolutely stacked. It has 2 title fights and so much more. In fact, I think it's one of the best cards of the year. I would pre-grade it an A, and I'm excited to talk about it. And if you're used to watching this channel, you probably familiar with my co-host, Milo McGregor. He's not available today, but he will be back next time. So let's get right into it. First up, we have Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards. This is a rematch. Leon Edwards is a minus 245 favorite, and I think rightfully so. As we saw in the first fight, Leon Edwards was a step ahead Belal Muhammad the entire way, even though it ended in a no contest due to the eye poke. But that was 3 years ago, and a lot has changed. It's going to be interesting to see because Belal Muhammad, he's training with Khabib Nurmagomedov. He was already a really good wrestler. I'm curious to see what that Dagestani approach to wrestling is going to look like against somebody like Leon Edwards, who's also a high-level wrestler. We know Leon Edwards will be better on the feet. He will be sharper. He will be crisper. He will have better movement. So I think it's going to be interesting if Belal can control him on the ground at all. Now, what's really interesting, both of these fighters are on incredible unbeaten streaks. I mean, Belal Muhammad hasn't lost a fight since 2015. I'm sorry, that's Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards hasn't lost a fight since 2015. Belal Muhammad hasn't lost a fight since 2019. But when I look at those fights closely and you look at the run Belal Muhammad's been on, he has some good names, right? He has Gilbert Burns, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and so forth, Sean Brady. But there's almost an asterisk next to every single one of those fights. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is a lot older. I believe he was pushing, or definitely pushing 40 at the time, was pushing 40 at the time of the fight. I don't even know if he might have been 40. Gilbert Burns had an injury during the fight. Sean Brady only has 2 solid wins in his MMA career. I mean, that's Kevin Gastelum and Michael Chiesa, but he hasn't really demonstrated that he's a true top 10 fighter. And Belal got a lot of hype for beating an unbeaten fighter, but we just don't know how good he is. It's not to take anything away from Belal. He might be as good as advertised, and he is a really good fighter. I mean, he hasn't lost, like I said, since 2019. But I think there's a tendency to elevate some of his wins to indicate he's more dominant than what he has been. With that said, I mean, it's an interesting fight. I will be intrigued to see if Belal takes down Leon Edwards first and he starts out in dominant position. Is he able to apply that top-heavy Dagestani wrestling style where he can methodically advance from one position to the next and really control Edwards for an entire round? I could see Belal getting a round or maybe even a 2, but overall, I'm taking Leon Edwards by decision. Next up, this is the fight that everybody's waiting for. This is the true main event of the fight card. Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes. John Jones is scared to fight Tom Aspinall, so it's Curtis Blaydes is the next man up for the interim title. Now, it's interesting. Tom Aspinall has looked absolutely dominant in the UFC. I believe he's 6-1 or 7-1 in the UFC. That one loss was, a freak injury within 15 seconds against Curtis Blaydes. You really can't take anything away from that. He submitted Volkov, remember, in the first round. He's dropped and finished Sergey Pavlovich in the first round. Tom Aspinall finishes his fights, and he finishes them quickly. He showed a level of dominance that is really unique in the heavyweight division, and he's really that next generation of heavyweight fighter. Now, with that said, I think there's 2 fighters in the UFC who pose a significant problem for Tom Aspinall. And no, I don't think it's John Jones. I think he beats John Jones fairly easily. I think one was Sergey Pavlovich because he hit so hard, but he was able to finish him. So that was a dangerous fight for Aspinall. The other one is Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes is the best wrestler in the heavyweight division. So it will really be interesting to see what happens there. If he takes, I mean, Tom Aspinall is an incredible grappler. But what happens if Curtis Blaydes shoots a double leg and is actually able to get him on the ground and have him in a dominant position? What will Tom Aspinall be able to do on his back? We don't know, particularly against such a good wrestler who is about the same size. Um, Let me just check real quick. I'm going to get the odds. Aspinall is a minus 390. I mean, I predict Aspinall is going to win. I think he's going to actually knock out Curtis Blaydes. I think he's going to do it in the second round. But this is still a dangerous fight. It's, I think, one of the more dangerous fights, even though Tom Aspinall is the favorite. And look, Curtis Blaydes can hit hard too. He's a big dude, and his striking has improved quite a bit. But give me Tom Aspinall by second round TKO. All right, next up, King Green versus Paddy the Batty Pimblett. This is a fun fight. I know a lot of lightweights have been calling out Paddy Pimblett because he had so much hype early on and he looked less dominant than some other rising stars or some other dangerous fighters. So for a lot of fighters, let's get that big name without the danger. So they think, because I think this fight is shaping up to be an upset. And I say upset because I'm looking at the odds right now. King Green, and it's no longer Bobby King Green. He did change his name. He's at a minus 125. He's a minus 125 favorite. This fight is going to be tricky for him. Look, Bobby Green, excellent striker. He keeps his hands low. He likes to pump that jab out a lot. He likes to showboat a little bit. He relies on his speed and quickness, but at 36, he's a little bit slower now than he was. He's also taken some damage as well. I mean, he had that vicious knockout not too long ago, and Paddy is better than people think. He's an incredibly good grappler. He's got some really good submission skills, can fight off his back fairly effectively, excuse me. And I think his stock dropped because everybody saw that fight against Gordon. And I had that fight for Gordon. It looked like Gordon won. And his stock dropped further based on how he responded to that in the ring. He was asked about that fight and he brushed it off as, oh yeah, there was no problem. And that was a problem for Paddy Pimblett's brand, because one of the things that Paddy Pimblett has done well is create this unique brand identity, this strong personal brand for himself. And part of that is through the way he talks and the way he acts. But everything prior to that interview came across as authentic. It seemed like the real him. It just seemed like this guy who was just, a little brash, a lot of confidence, but likable. But when you say something so blatantly dishonest after a fight, people don't like it. So I think it diluted his brand value. You take that with a close decision that many people many people thought he lost. It really changes the way people perceive him, both in terms of popularity, but also as a fighter. And he's actually pretty good. And I'm actually taking him to get the upset. I'm taking him by second round submission, and I am incredibly confident in this pick. Give me Paddy Pimblett by second round submission and watch the hype train get back on the tracks. All right. Next up, we have Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodriguez. This one was jumped to the main card. I mean, and it is main card worthy. This is an exceptional fight. Gregory Robocop Rodriguez hits hard, but he also gets hit hard. And what's interesting about him, he's an elite level grappler who doesn't like to grapple that much. He hits so hard. He has, he likes to throw down on the feet, but he takes damage. You look at what happened with Chidi Jukwani. I mean, that was one of the worst cuts I've ever seen, but he also had the toughness to actually get the win there. He's 6-2 in the UFC. I think he's an elite level fighter. He had a couple questionable losses that did surprise me when he did lose, but I think he's dangerous enough to beat dangerous enough to beat anybody. And then you move over to Christian Leroy Duncan. I mean, he's a really good prospect. I mean, he is 10-1. He has, the one loss was, early on in the UFC. I think he's 3-1 overall in the UFC. I probably have to look at that just to confirm, but his last fight, he looked really, really good. I mean, he's an elite level athlete. He moves in and out really well, has a good kicking game, good striking, just a really fun and composed fighter to watch. But I think, I think this fight could go either way, meaning that I think because Gregory Rodriguez is so hittable, I think Duncan can catch him. I mean, they and both guys hit hard, but I think Rodriguez hits a little bit harder. I think he's going to hurt him on the feet. I think he at some point he is going to get him on the ground though, because that's where he will have a distinct advantage. And give me Gregory Rodriguez by third round submission in a really fun fight. All right. Starting the main card is another incredible fight. Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. Giga Chikadze 15-3. Allen 19-3. Um, Giga, I mean, great kickboxer. He has the Giga kick. He's very technical. He hasn't really been that active, and he is. And let me just look at his age real quickly because well, this one doesn't have his age, but he is. Oh, there we go, 35. He is getting older, and I do question that. You know, when you get 35 years old, and this, in the featherweight division, that might be a problem. And he's going up against Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen has looked incredible throughout his career. He's coming off back-to-back losses, but look, that's Max Holloway. Max Holloway beats everybody except Alexander Volkanovski, but he beats everybody else, and he usually beats them pretty badly. He had some moments against Max Holloway, and then in his fight against Mosvar in his last fight, I mean, he kneed him in the head legally, but that was seen as an illegal knee at the time. If the ref does not intervene, he finishes him. So I give no weight to his last loss. I think Arnold Allen is really good. I think this is going to be a really fun fight, but give me Arnold Allen to start picking up the pace as the fight goes on, and give me Arnold Allen third round TKO. All right. So next up, let's see, where is that? Um, we have probably one of the best prelims that I've ever seen as the top prelim. It is Mokaev versus Manel Kape. Now, this is interesting because this was on the main card, and this is main card worthy. I mean, Kape has the fastest hands in the UFC. He's an elite level kickboxer, an elite level striker, throws the fastest combinations that you'll ever see, has really good power, flashy, fun to watch. Mokaev, on the other hand, is 12-0. He's undefeated. He is, he's starting to beat good competition. He looked a little underwhelming in his last fight though, but he still is unbeaten. There was also the fight where it looked like it looked like he tapped, but there's some controversy there. But this fight's going to come down to, can Mokaev get Kape to the ground for 3 rounds and control him there and really stay away from danger? Because if he stays on the feet for any extended amount of time, Kape can catch him at any given time. His power is such, and his speed is just blistering fast. This is probably the hardest fight to pick because I don't know really which way it's going to go. I could see it going both ways. I can make an argument for both ways, but right now I'm going to say Kape catches him, and he's going to catch him in the second round, and he's going to get a TKO. All right. Next up, Nathaniel Wood versus Daniel Pineda. Wood is a minus 450 favorite. He's a big favorite on this card. And I think that's just due to age. Pineda, I mean, he's an old school veteran. He's 38 years old. And one of the most important things to remember about him, I think he has 28 wins, and of those 28, 27, or I should say 27 of which came by finish, which is absurd. I just think at this age, he's just going to be a step behind throughout the entire fight. He's tough enough to make it to the final to the final round and make it to the end. So give me Wood by decision. All right, next up, Molly McCann versus Bruna Brasil. This will be a fun fight, particularly because it's in the UK where Molly McCann is so huge there. She's so fun to watch. I don't know why the UFC ever matched her up against Erin Blanchfield before. They should have kept the hype train rolling. But with that said, she is fun to watch. She has a thing for spinning back fist. Watch the crowd get into a frenzy when she gets in there. She's a minus 350 favorite. I think she's going to win this fight pretty easily. Give me McCann by dominant decision. All right, next up, Jake Hadley versus Calon Loughran. This is another interesting fight because I think Hadley is a better fighter all around, but he's coming up on short notice, and he's coming up a weight class. And so the question is, what's going to happen? Is he going to gas? Is uh, Lachran's size going to be a problem for him? Is he going to outlast him in the cardio? I think Jake Hadley is going to sneak by with a close decision. Give me Hadley 29-28 by a really close decision. Um, all right, let's go. We look at some of these are a little out of order, so I apologize. Maybe they've been reshuffled a bit. So we have Modestas Bukauskas versus Marcin Prachnio. I think this is a fun fight, competitively appropriate. Neither of these guys are world beaters, but they're both technically sound, and it will be interesting to see who will come out on top. Modestas Bukauskas, he got bounced from the UFC, came back, looked good in a couple fights, lost to Vitor Petrino. No shame there. That guy's a pretty solid prospect, even though he does make bad decisions. Give me Bukauskas by decision. If I'm going off this lineup, I see next Oban Elliott versus Preston Parsons. I think Elliott's a little overrated. I mean, he got into trouble versus Val against Woodburn. He was in trouble in the fight before that. And those are against pretty low level fighters, in terms of UFC standards. Preston Parsons, a good grappler. I think he's a pretty solid fighter. Give me Parsons. I think he's going to get a second round submission. All right, next up we have Sam Patterson, Kiefer Crosbie. Patterson. Okay, so this guy holds his head about as high as you can possibly do. I mean, I think he's what 6'3", 6'4". He's really tall for the division, but he holds his head up really high. He got just absolutely blasted in his first fight in the UFC. He got an impressive win in his last fight, and he won by sub. He is a good grappler. Um, Kiefer Crosbie, 10-4, not necessarily that high level, but he does hit hard. So here's what to watch for. Can Crosbie catch him going in early in the fight? That's a possibility. I think somehow Sam Patterson is going to avoid that. I think he's going to get it on the ground. I think he's going to submit in the second round. He is a 390 minus 390 favorite. I wouldn't bet on that. Because he could get caught. But I do think he'll win. Actually, give me second round submission by Patterson. We have two more fights. Mick Parkin versus Brzeski. Parkin is 9-0. Watch the crowd to really get behind him. I don't believe the hype. He had really struggled to beat Muhammad Usman, which if you're the real deal, you should probably win in dominant fashion there. He does train with Tom Aspinall, so I mean he's probably making incredible strides. He does provide a good amount of pressure given his size. He does move reasonably well. Brzeski, I just don't think he's that good at all. I think this is going to be a clear decision win for Parkin. So give me Parkin by decision. And then first up we have Shauna Bannon versus Elise Ardelean. Elise is a TikTok star with a ton of followers, and she's coming up on short notice. She is fighting Bannon. I don't think either of these women will see the top 15, but give me Bannon by decision. Well, that's all I have for you. Hope you enjoy the fights. It will be a fun card. Feel free, please subscribe and comment. Give me your comments. Tell me who you think is going to win. Some of these fights down below. Tell me where I might be wrong. And next time, Milo will be back. In the meantime, let's drop the mic. We're out.